will be from the Honourable Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, today is World Soil Health Day, and the Crop Rotation Act was put in place in order to foster good soil management, which is the foundation of good agriculture and ultimately of sustainable and profitable farming. Earlier this fall, the Standing Committee on Communities, Land and Environment discussed the Agricultural Crop Rotation Act and its enforcement, in particular, the amount of land that's exempt from the normal 3-year rotation required by the Act. When asked how many acres of the fields under contract to Cavendish Farms were exempt, Robert Irving said this: "It's quite high, I would think." A question to the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries: how many acres of island farmland are exempt from the 3-year requirement of the Crop Rotation Act?
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the Crop Rotation Act, there's some definitions of what's determined a row crop versus just a crop. So row crops would be defined as potatoes, something that's in a row. Carrots would be defined as a row crop. To my knowledge, there's no crops that are contrary to the Crop Rotation Act and grown on Prince Edward Island, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. The Honourable Leader of the Third Party, your first supplementary.
Sure.
Thank you. I understand that this data is neither collected nor kept. While I accept that the number of years between row crops is only one critical aspect of good soil management, many farmers, because of the razor-thin profit margins on potatoes, are now growing cash crops like corn and soya as part of a 3 or even a 2-year rotation. To the same Minister, how are exemptions granted and who monitors compliance?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
To my understanding, Mr. Speaker, if there's an individual farmer who wants to get an exemption, they would have to make an application to the Minister. I believe it's the Minister of Community Land and Environment for that particular request. To my knowledge, there's been no exemptions granted, Mr. Speaker. And I want to emphasize, I think that when you look at crops, like I said, there is a difference between a row crop and other particular crops. Soybeans is not considered a row crop. Grain is not a row crop. Forages are not row crops, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. And the Honourable Leader of the Third Party, your second supplementary.
Thank you. And corn, strangely, is also not considered a row crop. To the same Minister, with an 18-year study telling us that soil organic matter has been on a steady decline on Prince Edward Island, clearly the current practices are not enhancing soil health and are therefore threatening island farmers' long-term well-being. To the Minister, will you undertake a comprehensive review of the Act specifically focused on improving soil health?
Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Member mentions, he's very right in saying that soil health is imperative in providing good crops, good sustainable agriculture in the province of Prince Edward Island or anywhere else, Mr. Speaker. And we have actually implemented growers groups, Mr. Speaker, and these grower groups work together and try to actually farm their watershed as a watershed region, so they're not having fields that on the same rotation by different farmers, so they can mix that up a bit to make sure that they're providing sustainable agriculture, Mr. Speaker. But I'm happy to work with growers, work with the industries for whatever commodity it is to try to make sure that we're providing the best of possibilities for soil health in this province, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Minister.